Good morning, everyone. How are you? Good morning, Patricia McConnell. I'm so excited to have you here today. Hello to everyone who's joining. My name is Erica Austin. I am with Dogwise, and I am joined by Patricia McConnell, who you all know as the author of The Other End of the Leash. But today, we are here to talk about her brand new mystery novel, debut novel, Away to Me. So if you are joining us, we want to know where you're joining from. Feel free to leave us a comment in the comment box. Let us know where you're joining from. And we want to know, have you already pre-ordered the book? So you can pre-order the book online. We're going to talk about that a little bit later, but leave us a comment. Let us know where you're tuning in from. And if you have pre-ordered the book, or if you, like me, are counting down to release day, which, Patricia, when is the official release day of your novel?
Thank you. The official release. And actually, I actually got the real book. Erica has an advanced review copy called an ARC. So now you're in the publishing world. I actually got the actual book yesterday. Oh, I see it's backwards.
It is a little bit. That's okay. They can read backwards.
Anyway, yes, the actual launch is February 24th. But I'm doing a book tour in Wisconsin and in Texas. And I would be so thrilled to have people come to my events. Just go to my website, just my name. And there's a whole list of the book signings I'm doing in different bookstores, indie bookstores all around the country. So I would love to see you and have you come up and say, like, I ordered my books from Dogwise.
Yes, please tell Patricia that we ordered the books from Dogwise. That's most important. I am putting up a little image of your website here so people know where they can go. It is patriciamcconnell.com, and you'll be able to get more information about the book, find out where to pre-order it, and see, like Patricia said, her speaking tour. So if anyone is joining from Texas, or where else are you going, Patricia?
Oh, 6 different places in Wisconsin.
Okay, all around
Madison, Lake Geneva, Stevens Point, Green Bay, Milwaukee.
We've got someone who's joining on YouTube who said that they're in Madison, Wisconsin, and pre-order is in. Fantastic. Hello to Beth from Ohio, Karen from Flagstaff, Arizona, Karen London. Of course, you pre-ordered your book pre-ordered your copy. And Mallory is so excited to be here from Memphis, Tennessee. Thank you guys for joining us this morning. Patricia, I'm so excited to talk to you about this novel. I can't wait to jump right in, but I want to invite our audience. If you have a question for Tricia, specifically about the novel, or if you have any questions at all, or want to drop a comment, we would love to have this be a dialogue between everybody. So feel free, if you've got a question or a comment for Tricia, that we have you joining us in the comments. And we've got a comment coming in right now that says, can't wait to see you in Wisconsin. How are you feeling about the book tour? Are you feeling good about your book tour? It seems like a lot of travel.
It is a lot. I will admit it is a lot. The thing that I'm mixed, because I'm incredibly excited, one, to support indie bookstores, and mostly to see people and meet people and have them, be able to have face-to-face interchange with them, sign some books. I'm actually worried because I'm right-handed and I have like a big mess in my hand, and it actually is very difficult to write right now. So I just want to warn you, if you get an autograph book from me, it might look interesting, and maybe it'll be like the rug with a little flaw in it. It'll make it more valuable.
I happen to have an autographed copy of The Other End of the Leash here, and so
that's what it's supposed to look like.
This is what it's supposed to look like, but you might get a really authentic Patricia McConnell autograph in your book.
It'll be very timely. Yeah.
Fantastic. So let's talk about the book. I can't wait to dive in and talk about this book. And I'm going to share this comment from Karen. I am also very happy to share this comment and to know this spoiler. No dogs die in the book. Bless you. Thank you for that.
Yes. And if I could just interject, I actually had to have a discussion with my editor about this, because she said, you cannot give away the plot. You can't do that. And I said, yeah, I can. I have to, because if dog lovers all around the world think they're going to be reading this book in which there's a lot of drama and a lot of tension, and some dog that they fell in love with dies, it's like they won't read it. So
Yeah.
I am giving away part of the plot. I mean, I'm the first to admit I am giving away part of the plot, but no dog dies. There is a lot of drama associated with people and dogs, and it's a murder mystery. So a person dies.
A person dies, but luckily no dogs. And it's interesting, actually, now that I will admit, I stayed up way past midnight reading last night and then immediately
Oh,
woke
I
up
love that.
and started reading again. It really, of course, it gripped me. And I'm like, well, now I have to see what happened. But full confession, I purposely didn't finish the book because I was afraid I would give away the ending. So I still have a little bit of murder mystery left. I have bookmarked lots of things to talk to you about. And it's interesting, this spoiler alert, I knew that spoiler alert, but now that I'm in the book, I think I was thinking like no dog dies, like Jack is kind of the main character, border collie, that I'm like, okay, well, Jack is safe. But now that I'm thinking back, I'm like, there are some other times when dogs are in peril. And I'm like, oh my gosh, does the dog die? But spoiler alert, it doesn't. That's good that no dogs die in the making of this book. Trisha, I want to ask you, first of all, right out the gate, how did the idea for this book come about? You're obviously a best-selling author already for nonfiction books, but this is your first work of fiction. So how did this idea come to be?
Erica, it came just as something I wanted to play at. I was over 70. Everybody I know and love is retired, basically. And I stopped seeing clients and I stopped traveling around the world speaking. But I love reading. I read everything. The only thing I don't read is sci-fi, but my husband takes care of that. He's the big sci-fi fantasy reader. So we're an all genre house, but I love reading. I love good writing. I love it. I'm one of those people who drives you crazy because I'll be reading something and go like, oh, let me read you this wonderful line, from this book, right? So I literally thought like I actually, Erica, I had a scene in my head that just literally popped into my head like a piece of toast. And I was at sheepdog trial, and it's a beautiful trial. It's gorgeous. There's a but not too far away, maybe a third of a mile away. There's a shooting range kind of place. And every Sunday, there's a lot of shooting. So I'm sitting watching a handler at the post in this gorgeous green, lush Wisconsin spring. and like boom, boom. And I thought, wow, what if the guy standing at the post about to run his dog just got hit by a bullet? And I had that scene for years, literally in my head. And I just decided just to play at writing like just something fun for me to do. It was just more fun. And then I really got it. I just got totally into it. I just got sucked into it. Writing fiction, the way I learned to think about it now is writing bad fiction. I used to say writing bad fiction is easy, but writing good fiction is hard. Now I say writing bad fiction is hard, but writing good fiction is really hard. And I love good writing, and I just got into it. I read every book I could on reading fiction. I read tons and tons and tons and tons, as you're supposed to do. I went to some workshops, and I just got completely enmeshed with it, and then started thinking of it like, this could be a book. And then I started getting really serious about this is a book I would like to publish or have published.
That's amazing. They say that to be a good writer, you have to be a good reader. So it's great that you're saying, you read everything under the sun and doing that research of how do you then take that passion for reading and turn it into a passion for writing. And again, you are a published author. You've got lots of skill writing nonfiction. So how was it a different experience for you writing fiction versus your other books before?
It is harder. It really it really is harder. The great thing about fiction that I remember thinking when I started was, this is so cool. I'm just limited by my imagination. Anything could happen. I mean, just anything could happen. How cool is that? But the problem is anything could happen. So in nonfiction, you have like, this is what I want to say. This is my outline. But in nonfiction, every single sentence, literally anything could happen. And so you have to develop, besides sort of a narrative arc, right? You have to develop characters. You have to learn how to write dialogue, which is very hard to do to make it sound realistic. You have to write in such a way that you understand that every single word matters. For example, if I can, away to me, the title, away to me is a signal that a handler gives to a dog to run counterclockwise around the sheep, always from the dog's perspective, which is hard at first. You have to learn to think like, the dog. So run counterclockwise around the sheep, away to me. Or a lot of people just say away, but the formal cue is away to me. But Maddie McGowan, who's the protagonist, Erica, who you now know well, is she's an animal behaviorist, right? What you know, she's an animal behaviorist, and she very much stays in her lane. She has two really good friends. She's a good behaviorist. She loves dogs, but she stays, pretty. She stays pretty confined, right? She's sort of protects herself a lot. And so away to me is also a metaphor for Maddie, because Maddie is like, get away, go away, go away. I don't need you. Oh, but actually I learn in the process of the novel that I really do want more relationships. I really do want something I'm not getting. And so that's the to me. Same thing, Lonely Owl Farm. Lonely Owl Farm. I mean, I thought a long time about what to name the farm. Lonely Owl Farm. Our owls don't get lonely. Owls are solitary. They're not social birds, right? So Maddie is this contradiction where she pushes people away, but she really, really needs a different kind of relationship than one she has.
It is a really wonderful title. I have dipped a toe into sheep herding. I have a rescue border collie, and we took him to sheep herding lessons when we first got him. And then when COVID hit, everything got a little bit harder. And I know enough to know the cues, and that it's from the dog's perspective, and that you really have to think about it. And, it's something that you've really infused the book with obviously some of your personal experiences being behavior specialist for years and years. And now, did you discover sheep herding in retirement, or were you doing it while you were still seeing clients?
No, I started a long time ago. I got into it because I was in college as a grown-up. I went back to college when I was like 39 or something. And I needed a senior honors thesis. And I wanted it to be something about communication between people and animals. And I went to my advisor and I said, I want to write a senior honors thesis on communication between people and dolphins. Because sort of, that was all the rage at that point in time, right? In the 80s. Yeah. And he sort of rolled his eyes and said, you're in Wisconsin.
Not all the dolphins in Wisconsin.
This is supposed to be, you're supposed to be doing original research. Why don't you study the signals between sheepdog handlers and their dogs? Because he did a lot of research out west, and he'd see these handlers communicating with these dogs. He said that is a natural, organic form of communication. It would be really interesting. That turned into my PhD dissertation, which was the effect of acoustic structure, the way a sound sounds on the behavior of the receiver. But so I ended up interviewing and recording tons of sheepdog handlers. And it is the most addictive for people like me. It is so addictive to watch this relationship between three different species who have completely different relationships. It's so complicated. It's so, for somebody who loves relationships and, and being out in nature in a very active way, I just got totally hooked on it. So I started competing a long, long time ago, and then I dropped it when I got really active in my business as being an animal behaviorist and traveling around the world. And then I picked it up again about, 9 or 8 years earlier, before now. And I know enough about sheepdog trialing and competing to write about it well. And I know enough about it to know what I don't know. I am very much an intermediate. I am not a top level trainer. To do that, I would need to run 5-6 dogs and go to trial every weekend for 8 months a year. And I wanted to write a novel. And I love my garden. And so I did fine, but I was never, I just never would ever call myself a top handler. I just know enough to know what I don't know.
My experience with sheepdog handling was very similar of like, I've been a professional trainer for a while. I've seen behavior cases. I get it. And then I purposely rescued a border collie that had behavior issues. Like he came from a border collie rescue, and I called them and said like, you know what you don't know, right? I'm like, I'm a pro. I can give me a problem dog. And they were like, okay. And they did. And he is my heart dog. He's the best dog in the world. He's best fit for me. But I realize now that I've had him for almost 10 years, like he would not be a good dog for most people. But the border collie rescue was like, find sheep herding and find like, don't do this style, do this one, do more research about, there's different kinds, in every dog sport and with every breed. But I got really good information from that rescue, and they put me in touch with a really great handler, and she just was amazing and very patient. And I remember the first time I went out with my dog and sheep and was like, oh, I am way in over my head. And it was funny. We have videos of it, and I've watched them hundreds of times, kind of like his first couple of time on sheep, not on leash, with me being like, oh no. And there's definitely a point where he's like, I know what I'm doing. Can you just stop talking? Like, get out of the way, and so it's amazing. It's absolutely wonderful. When you said, you kind of had to pick between becoming a top handler, working dogs every weekend and trialing and everything, or writing your novel, I want to say from the bottom of my heart, thank you for choosing your novel, because you all of us and all of the people who are going to read this book into the world of sheep herding just enough to get a taste of it and be able to kind of have that experience living vicariously through you and Maddie, who's kind of at that intermediate level of, so I think it was a selfless gift for you to work on your novel and not just do sheep herding every week.
I planned it that way.
I thought you might have.
Absolutely planned it that way. But you bring up such an interesting point. One of the things I never thought about until I started learning more about fiction is that one of the things people love about fiction, and I do too, but I never thought about it, is that so often fiction introduces you to a world you just don't know anything about. Mm-hmm. Some of the most common ones are being a detective or being, bondsman, like, Sarah Paretsky, and so one of the things I love about this book, in hindsight, is that it does introduce people to this fascinating sport and interaction. So I love reading about other things and learning about other things. I had to write what I know because I don't know fiction, and I'm really happy to say I have no background in murder. Really, really happy to say that.
Good. Yeah. Put that on the record.
So yeah, I needed this to be a behaviorist who lives in Wisconsin. I needed to make a lot of it familiar. And when I was really through with some of my first drafts, and I was at a writing seminar, people were talking about what they're calling autofiction now. Is like it's not a memoir, but it's sort of a fictionalized version of your life. And so, in hindsight, I remembered that when I first started thinking about writing a different kind of book, I talked to my agent. I said, I want to write an equivalent of All Creatures Great and Small, but have it be, one, a woman, two, a behaviorist, not a vet, because people don't know what our lives are like. They don't know what the life of a behaviorist or a trainer is like. And I wanted it to be in the US. And she said, I don't think that would sell. And I just sort of forgot about it. And then, a year passed, and I was like, well, I should write a mystery because I love mysteries. So I ended up incorporating, all of that. And there is a lot of it that does parallel my life. Although I promise you that my car is not full of dirty McDonald's wrappers as Maddie McGowan's is.
I just read a line this morning that said, where did I say? Yes, it says it right here. That you had the character, not you, the main character had bread over, salad and roasted chicken was fine, but a girl needs real food in times of trouble as she's through the McDonald's food line. And I resonated with that line. Okay. So I'm a little disappointed to hear that you don't have some, French fry wrapper.
I have some, believe me, absolutely. I just don't have a car covered in the evidence.
All right, that's fair. Well, that's because we have dogs who sneak in and are like, "Did you know you dropped a chicken nugget? I'll take care of that for you." Best vacuum cleaners. It is. I think it's interesting to kind of hear you talk about that. Writing what you know, and obviously you don't know murder, so good to have that on the record. But I was reading this book. I very recently moved to a very, very small town in North Carolina, and I am walking distance from Main Street, and it's like old town, and like half the buildings are up for rent in small town America. And every time I walk up there, I'm like, I could have a little office in town. And I think to myself, there are not enough people who know what a behaviorist is versus a trainer in this tiny small town. Right. But when I'm picturing Maddie McGowan and I'm reading her story, and she's driving to the office from her farm, which is of course my ultimate dream, to have a border collie farm like you, or a farm with border collies on it.
It'll happen, Erica. It'll happen.
I hope so. I'm imagining this, and I'm always imagining Maddie driving to the town that I live in up into Main Street and being like, I know where Maddie's office is in Main Street, USA, up the street from where I live. But something that I even wrote about to talk to you about is like, how much of a stretch, how much of a work of fiction stretch is it? Like, Maddie sees a lot of clients, and she sees a lot of clients with a variety of behavior issues, not just dog bites or resource guarding, like the whole gamut. And there's some characters, the three guys, I now can't remember. I think one of them is Clyde, but they've got
Daryl and the other brother Daryl.
Yeah, that's right. And they like the buy-in. Like, I love that you, especially, a lot of people who are going to be watching this, a lot of people who have followed you for years are either dog trainers, dog professionals, animal behaviorists. Like, there's even a section in here where basically, how do you get the client buy-in? And especially in a teeny tiny small town where people are like, I don't need a dog trainer, just, I don't know, put the dog on a chain in the yard or something. Like, there's been a shift, right, in the last several years about thinking about even the difference between a dog trainer and an animal behaviorist, but also like, are there enough people who need help and then seek it out to get help from a professional behaviorist, in your experience, both writing for Maddie and your experience living in a small town, being a behaviorist?
Yeah, that's a great question. And because it's such a timely question, because in my area, Madison, Wisconsin, which has sort of been called the San Francisco of the Midwest, it's a very liberal enclave here. Mm-hmm. But just ever since COVID, there's been a proliferation of people using electric collars and prong collars. And there's this big TikTok parade of people who will take your dog in for $3,500. Train your dog in 2 weeks, and the electric collar that comes back, that's at $500 extra. And so things it's just amazing to watch things ebb and flow, because when I first started training, it was all about punishment and dominance, and then things went this way, which was such a relief, right? And shockingly to me, now there's this sort of sway in the other direction. So one of the things that I never had this intention, Erica, and I wish you knew all your names, Michelle, Karen, all of you who are listening out there. I never had the intention of educating people about what it was like to be, an animal trainer, a dog trainer, or a behaviorist, especially one with a positive reinforcement perspective. But so going back to talking about how people learn about sheepdog trialing from reading this book, my hope is, and I don't know if this will happen, my hope is that this broadens out of the dog world, because it's such a good mystery. I mean, that's my hope, right? I'm not embarrassed to say that myself, but my hope is that it gets itself out of the dog world. Right now, almost all the publicity, I've done 17 podcasts, and every single one of them is in either the dog or the animal behavior world. And my hope is that people will like this as a mystery enough that people who, they like dogs, but they're not people. They're not us,
Right. Yeah.
They're not our people, right? They're not dog people. They may have a dog, but they're not dog people. That just indirectly they will learn what it's like to be a behaviorist. And a dog trainer who works with serious problems. Our work, it's so important. I truly believe it's not given as much respect as it deserves. what we do is really important. We do not spend our time running through fields of daisies with golden retriever puppies, which I think a lot of, everybody out there, if you're a professional, I guarantee you, every one of you have had somebody say, oh, I just love what you do.
Mm-hmm.
I love to do that. And I just left a little room with a dog who I think might want to kill me, or a husband and wife sobbing hysterically, or et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It's like, it's hard work and it's important work. And at every level, from puppy classes on, it's really important work. And puppy classes are one of the most important things anybody could do, in my opinion. So hopefully people will discover more about this world. And people who are in the world, I think it's fun to see yourself reflected. It's like,
oh yeah,
did you have that feeling when you were reading? It's like,
yes.
People would do that. Or I'm so sorry, I'm interrupting my questions. Okay. So I don't forget, because I forget everything now. So I don't forget. I actually had things that happened with clients' dogs, or Maddie and her dogs, that advanced the plot. And then I would go back and read them and go like, Maddie would never do that. Or I would never do that. Or a good trainer, they would never do that. So I had to go back and no, that wouldn't happen. So
yeah, I think so. A couple of things I noticed immediately. I was like, ooh, I like how she sprinkled in classical counter conditioning. Like, no one who's going to know what that is. The dog pros who already are following you and know this book are absolutely going to be like, I see what you did there. But I think, there's I have these conversations all the time with people who are like, oh, well, that's negative reinforcement. And I was like, it's positive punishment, but you're real close. I'm like, if you don't have the quadrants tattooed on your forearm or in your brain, it doesn't matter. Right. But the idea of yes, people have heard of positive reinforcement, and that you're sprinkling that into the book here and there. And I know there was a little section, I flagged it, of you're talking about police canine handler and how Maddie was surprised and impressed to see that the dog was not on a prong collar, which is more typical in that field and industry. So there's all these little nuggets that are in there that I find are great. And there's a section where a character says basically to Maddie in a snarky way, there's a dog who's feeling afraid. And I think you might have even said the phrase classical counter conditioning. It's about Ryan and Ranger and the thunderstorm.
Right.
And there's skeptic. How many times have we seen this? There's someone, for me, it's always the husband. The wife made the call, or the husband had to make the call because the wife said you had to, but then he's standing in the corner with his arms folded being like, I'm not doing this. And the wife is like, hand me a clicker, all the stuff, right? But the husband's not buying in. And this character says, so you're going to give him cookies for being a wuss? And I'm like, oh, I've heard that, right? Relatable.
All heard that, right? We've all heard that. Yeah.
And I think what's so great is just in the next paragraph, the way that Maddie responded is the way that we all hope that we respond in that moment. But it almost is, you said it was difficult to write dialogue and have it be real, but it there's kind of these little nuggets in there for those of us who do this for a living of here's a way that you could actually coach a client so that you do have the client buy-in, so that you don't have to have, you have more client compliance of these are real conversations that we as professionals are having all of the time.
Yeah.
And they're sprinkled in here and it's wonderful.
Thank you. And again, none of those were intentional. Honestly, that was just so, I mean, the challenge for me, the primary challenge for me was to create a plot of a murder mystery, because I've never done anything. You don't do that in nonfiction, right?
Right. Yes.
So my nonfiction books, For the Love of a Dog, and my memoir, Education of Will, Other End of the Leash, all of those books, many of them start with a scene, and then a story, a really short story, and then that story is there to illustrate a fact, information that I want to convey. So, I'm really comfortable writing a scene, but a scene is not a novel. So for me, writing about Maddie's time working with clients was so much the easy part. The harder part was one, it was character development. I mean, when I first started with Maddie McGowan, I knew who she was, mid-40s, lives alone. Something happened in New Mexico she doesn't want to talk about, has sheep. Her hobby is sheepdog trials. So I had all the demographics of that, but I I didn't really feel like I knew her until I was halfway through the book. And I really had to work on that. I had some readers, as every writer does. You have all this help. You have readers and editors, and I mean, just a long list of wonderful people. But I remember my friend Donna saying at one point, it was pretty early on, but she said, like, do you know who Maddie is? And I was like, yeah. And then I could tell by the way she was asking, it's like, no, you don't. So I really worked on character development. And what happened, it was so cool. I've read about it, but to have it happen to you is so cool. So Maddie was like a photograph in a dark room. My dad was an amateur photographer, and so I would go in the dark room with him. He would put a piece of white paper into a tray with developer in it. And then slowly, if you've ever seen it, I think Erica's nodding like you did, slowly this image would get stronger and sharper and more, colorful. And that's what happened with me and Maddie. And by the time I was done writing the book, I just adore her. I absolutely know who she is. She is a real living person to me. I adore her, and I adore her potty mouth best friend, Dorothy.
Oh, I love Dorothy. Dorothy is great.
Dorothy is so fun. And we all know a Dorothy somewhere. And the other thing that felt really fun was it was so important to me that the dogs were also characters and the land was a character. The setting is a character unto itself. It's so important that people know that they feel like, I want you to feel like you're there, like you're on Maddie's farm, like you're at a sheepdog trial.
You succeeded. I have a note on page 157. You're talking about like the land as a character is really interesting because I've seen the beautiful sunsets. I've been blessed to see like pastoral, beautiful amazingness. Don't live there yet, but someday. And there's the way that you pull in, it's interesting you talked about the owls at the beginning because the way that you pull in the bird sound that did not get missed by me. It almost like gave me a context that brought me into like, oh, I know what a nuthatch sounds like. And I can visual or hear it kind of, and it brought me into the story in a way. But you talk about, on page 157, you talk about the sloping porch. Do you remember that? It's a great scene where it says that we took our mugs and settled on the narrow porch, which pitched forward a few degrees to keep water draining away from the house. You always felt like you were about to fall forward if you didn't pay attention. Not very relaxing, but then again, old-time farmers in the Midwest didn't seem to favor relaxing much. And I love that like little quip about like, of course, farmers aren't sitting around hanging out. They don't care at the end of the day if the porch is slightly there, but it brought me onto the porch with, I think it was Chris and Maddie sitting on the porch having a cup of coffee. And, it's bringing you into that scene of like, I can picture that porch. I can sit on that porch with these characters. And you really did an amazing job making the farm a character.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. Thank you. I really do. I love that part of it. And one of the things I learned about writing good fiction and getting people really into it. And that's I want to read fiction. I want to go away. I want to be in another world,
Yes.
I want to be thinking about my life. I want to be completely immersed, like, TV, movies. I want to be there, right? And one of the things I learned early on is that for people to be there, you need to engage all the senses. And what so many books do, and I've noticed this now just constantly, is because we're primates, they talk about what they see.
Yes.
So they talk about what things look like, but they don't talk about the soundscape. And they don't talk about what things smell like. And I did some of that, but I think in my next book, because this is theoretically, this is going to be a trilogy.
That's exciting.
So Away to Me is book number 1. Come By, which I've already started, which means go clockwise around the sheep, is book number 2. I already have 4 chapters.
I have goosebumps. Can you see my goosebumps? I have goosebumps. I'm so excited.
Well, you have to keep me able to write.
Oh no!
Functioning, but we will. Darn it, we will. I don't care how old I am. But then the last book is That'll Do.
Tell our audience why that is a significant title.
Oh, That'll Do is It's the signal, God, it actually chokes me up. It's the signal you give your dog when you're done working. That'll, if you saw Babe, the movie Babe, right? That'll do Babe, right?
Right.
Yeah, and it's like your work is done now. Good dog. Thank you. Your work is done. I actually have that. The reason I'm choking up is that I have that on a tombstone for my dog Luke. That'll do, Luke. Yeah.
That's good. Something I had made some notes about in this book is that there's a level of authenticity and vulnerability that is here. And this may be a good transition to talk about this. The way that you address in the book, again, subtly, but bringing your readers in, grief. So Maddie starts out with this relationship with her mentor, George, who is killed right off the bat.
Yep.
And it is a murder mystery, but throughout the book, I have it written down like page 86, page 91, like all these little examples where, page 149 of all these like little, how do you deal with grief? And then, my question for you is, how have you found a good way to deal with grief? There's this where they're telling funny stories at a memorial service, but as someone who has experienced grief and gone through that, there was this section where a sentence where Maddie is looking around for George's truck and then it hits her like it's not going to be at the trial. And like that was such a real like knock me back scene because that's happened to me. There's a scene where you are describing Maddie as having to contort herself to hang up her hat because she doesn't want to move a dog crate. She can't bring herself to move a dog crate. Dog doesn't die, spoiler alert, but like the dog is not in the crate at that time. Right. And kind of what we do in real life to handle grief and to process grief. And I'm going on that journey with Maddie through the book, but can you talk a little bit about your personal experience and how that played into this character and this development?
Yeah. It's if we're lucky, grief is a part of the human condition, right? And one of the things I constantly remind myself, and this is some wise person, I can't quote them, I'm so sorry. But, the wisdom that the stronger the grief, the greater the love. And so one sort of plugging into that, I mean, I'm still deeply grieving over my sister's death. My older sister, Wendy Barker, was a brilliant poet. I actually mentioned her in the last paragraph of the book. And my first husband, Doug McConnell, where I got McConnell from, just died just recently. And so there's been a lot of grief in my life lately. And that's true of so many of us. And again, it's the human condition. And I really believe that one beautiful line that the only way out of it is through it. You can't pretend it's not happening. And sometimes life is really hard because you have 3 kids, right? And you have to raise them, even though their father just died, right? It can be very, very difficult to let yourself really, truly grieve. But any way you possibly can, I think is helpful. And one of the things that you bring up, Erica, that is very much related to how we started, which is No Dogs Die, in the making of this novel, that I want to write an essay about this because that is, talking about grief, that is fascinating, that you can kill off a person and but not a dog. And and I know some people sort of demean and dismiss that and think it's like wrong and silly. And I think it's fascinating psychologically. And I think part of it is what I wrote about in For the Love of a Dog, the book about emotions, which is that dogs get us coming and going. They are, of course they can communicate, but we can't talk to them like I can talk to you now. And they're helpless. They can't open the door most of the time, right? So they elicit all that I need to nurture and protect you that we have for infants. But we also get this love from them that we want from our parents, this non-judgmental positive regard, as psychologists say, right? And you can't get that from your parents because they're the people who have to like domesticate you, right? I mean, you can get it to some extent, and many people get it a lot more than others, right? But we get both of those things from dogs. And the grief of losing a dog, I mean, I think every single person listening here knows what I'm talking about. It can flatten you. It's horrible. And, it's fascinating to me that that we can have a relationship with a non-human individual who we can't really talk to, but we can communicate with, right? And we can share a life with, and we can share emotions with, and that can be as devastating as losing somebody we really love. So grief is part of, again, I'm just going to circle back. Grief is part of love, you know, and whenever I get sort of lost after letting myself cry or do whatever I do, you know, open up a book of my sister's poems, then I just sort of remind myself how lucky I was to have so much love in my life, that I love that person so much, or that dog. Yeah.
I was introduced recently. I was reading a book, kind of screening a book for Dogwise to see if it was one we were going to carry. And I was introduced to the concept of anticipatory grief, because dogs' lives are naturally shorter than ours. And what is it to have a dog in your life and know you're going to lose them? And again, with my rescue border collie, like, this is the first dog I've had as an adult that I'm watching him age. And I'm like, well, I don't like this. This isn't good, you know?
Yeah,
and
yeah,
I have to say, like, what a gift. He's still chasing Frisbees and begging me to go find some sheep every weekend. And it's an, you know, it, like you said, it is a part of life. We've got a couple questions from the audience that I'm going to finally share you with the audience a little bit. And then I have another question I hope we have time to get to. I wanted to share this comment. Mallory says, I'm that person. I have a dog, but I'm not in the animal behavior industry. I just love mystery novels. Mallory, you're going to have to read this book and get back to us and see what you think of it. Make sure that you pre-order it and leave a review. We have Michelle saying, my first exposure to positive reinforcement training was on your radio show, Calling All Pets. And Michelle also wants to know, and so do I, thank you for asking this question, Michelle, will the book be available in audio form? I would love to hear you read it.
Well, you won't hear me read it, but better than that, one, it will be available in audio form, I believe, on the 24th, same date as
wonderful.
Excuse a cough. Why do we say you have a frog in your throat? That is really a disgusting image. I do not actually have a frog in my throat. I just want to make that clear. But it is actually very difficult to be a good narrator of a book. I actually tried doing it, and I was like, oh, you know, you have to be really, here's what I learned. And Erica, I know you know this from working on Audible versions of books. You know, thank you for getting some of my training books out in an Audible form. What's really important is to speak very clearly and distinctly without sounding like this, because sounding like this is awkward and unauthentic and exhausting and eventually horrible. But so the good news is that Ellen Archer, who won, get this, she won the Audie, which is the Oscar of narrating books. She won the Audie for reading my book, For the Love of a Dog. So if you don't have that, you might want to get it. She's a fabulous reader. I was praying that they would hire her to read this book, and they did, and she loved it, and I think people will love it too. So yes, so it'll be available as an ebook, available audio, and available as a hardcover.
Wonderful. And it looks like Ingrid actually knew the answer to that question because she asked, how does it feel to have Ellen Archer, love her, again, as a narrator for the audiobook, because narrators can make or break a book. That is so true. As you and I just discussed, I have been in the process of getting a lot of the Dogwise books and some of your books as well onto Audible or in audiobook format over the last 2 years. And it is a task, like even just doing, like supervising the production of an audiobook. There's so many things that go into it. I have had so many people say like, you should narrate audiobooks. I'm like, nope, it's hard. I've tried it. It's a really hard work. And like you said, to get it right. So it is a great thing to hire professionals who are professional voice actors who do this for a living,
yes,
who are not AI, who really know what they're doing to be able to make that book come to life. So I'm extremely excited to hear that it is coming out on the same release date as an audiobook. And Michelle says, great, the audiobook sounds fantastic.
And just along that line, I don't know, maybe I shouldn't even say this, but I think I can, and I'm going to. So my literary agent called me a couple of weeks ago and said, my agency is a literary agency. It also works in TV and movies. There is the beginning of a discussion about this becoming a TV series.
That would be extremely exciting.
That would be crazy making, exciting, and nervous and scary. And again, the chance of that happening is, it's not measurable. It's with an electronic microscope. It's not measurable. But still, just the fact that somebody in that field who knows the field basically said, this could be a great TV series. That was just very gratifying. It was exciting.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think we should all manifest that.
Yes.
Manifest that into reality.
Here's something really important that I'm worried about for that. Nicole Kidman does not get to play the animal behaviorist. Maddie is 5'2". She's short, and she's, as her aunt said, she's a little hefty, according to her aunt. And it's just, Maddie is every woman. I mean, Maddie is us, right? Maddie is not Nicole Kidman, right? She is not this gorgeous, perfect. She's not Margot, what's her name?
Oh, Margot Robbie. She's not Barbie.
Yeah. I mean, how does anybody look like that? Lord, right? Anyway, Maddie is just, she's just a person, right? She's just a woman, and she's short. So because she's a woman and she's short and she's in this field, she often gets dismissed and demeaned by law enforcement. So, and that's something I think many of us have also run into sometimes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That read well in the book, that kind of, again, real life that is out there of being dismissed. Karen said, yay, more mysteries from you. Love the titles. Could not.
Thank you.
And yes, Michelle saying a TV series would be great. Heather said it would be great to get this kind of info to the general population. I agree. Like I said, I think it's so great that you're kind of sprinkling in information in there about, a little bit of the fallout of punishment without it sounding preachy, or saying like, hey, you can trade chicken for a sock, which we don't have a lot of time, but I do want to touch briefly on, you have a scene where Maddie is seeing a client and gets bit. And I just want to say, like, I loved that you included that scene. And also, I hate it when that happens. Like, it has happened to me recently, and I'm like, I am a professional. I know what I'm doing. I can read dog body language. Like, I do this for a living, and I got bit. Right. And the emotion that surprised me the most after my recent dog bite in a professional setting was shame.
Oh, yeah. Oh, totally. Oh, yeah. Our job is to not get bitten. Right. I mean, if we get bitten to me, like if I get bitten, it's my fault. It's just that simple. It's just my fault. My job is to not get bitten because it's horrible for the owners. Right. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's the last thing you need. So I've been bitten twice, as in 25 years. I've been scared. I was going to try and find another word that would sounded less, I don't know, mushy. Sounded cooler, I've been, excited and stimulated. And no, I've been scared by a couple of dogs. But I've actually only been bitten twice. And actually, that bite that I described was very similar to the bite that I got. Actually, it was on my hand. It was a deep puncture onto my hand. It was from a wolf dog hybrid. And I can't say too much because I do believe in client confidentiality. But the funny thing is, just very quickly, is it was painful. It was a deep puncture into the flesh of my hand right here. And I had a date. It was long before I was married to Jim, and I had a date, and I called the guy I was going out with that night and said, I got bitten by a dog and it really hurts. And then I used arnica and some other and ibuprofen, right? And so I go to the date, and like, you can really see anything. And he was like, well, that was nothing. I was like, and he was like, I don't see any blood.
I'm guessing there was not a second date.
There was one more, but that was the end of that. Yeah.
Before we end, I want to share a quote from the book that is very early on in the book. And it really, again, spoke to me. And we talked about, pulling people in to this story and into a world that they may not have the absolute honor of experiencing first person. Getting to, I think even just watching sheepdog trials on TV, there's nothing like seeing it in person in real life. And there's definitely nothing like being the handler of that dog, as you know better than I. I've never trialed. You're braver than me. But this quote where you say, "What is more beautiful than watching a dog, all muscle and mind and heart, run free across the field of green to gather a flock of sheep? My heart swells every time I see it, every time. And I see it a lot." And that quote, it really struck me. It was something that spoke to me immediately of seeing this beauty in dogs. And I think I really appreciated, again, the way, like, Maddie is not a perfect character, right? Like she has trauma. She has a history. Like you said, she has developed into a real person for you. And in her history, something that we're talking about, Heather said, we're sneaking this information in to the general public. You mentioned in here, as someone who's personally has been through a lot of therapy, you mentioned, like, Maddie has a panic attack at one point, and you bring in that, I can see 5 things, I can hear 4 things, I can smell 2 things, and taking deep breaths, like right there, like, just take a deep breath. There's more to it than that, right? But there's a scene I just was reading about where Maddie is, she's at Tom's farm and she's activated. She's essentially triggered in some way. And I think that it was a little bit of like that canine, like the letter K9 handler dismissing the small female behaviorist who does actually know her stuff. You can say bad words in the book. I'm not going to say them live on Facebook. Who knows her stuff about dogs. And he's kind of dismissed her and been like, give up. And she's triggered. And she goes and works Jack on the sheep. And she's not even asking permission. She's like, I'm going to go do this. I'm going to go work sheep now. Goodbye. Don't talk to me anymore. And she, you wrote, I'm certain that I bookmarked it like 6 different times where you say it's like therapy. And there is a theme in this book that we won't have time to fully explore about addiction. And people who've had addiction, people who've been affected by people who have addiction. And I want to give you the opportunity to talk a little bit about, like, Maddie actually says at one point in the book to Chris, when the first time he sees sheep herding, she says, it's addictive. Sheep herding is addicting. Right. And I like highlighted it 7 times of like, that's something that we can kind of say dismissively, like, oh, this is a thing that I love so much and I'm obsessed with, but it's addicting. But then this theme that's in the book about addiction and how it affects other people and how we use sheep herding, sheep herding as therapy, or animals as kind of, we like colloquially, anecdotally say, my dog is my therapy dog, right? But this relationship that Maddie has also with work and getting lost in her work, like she needs to kind of leave behind the real world and what's going on with her grief and take a break from this murder mystery that is her life and like dive into the clients and their lives and, solving their problems. There's such an interesting balance between kind of that like workaholic and escapism. And you talked a little bit about, like, if you're going to read a novel, you want to like get out of your world. Same. I am the same way. Yeah. Can you talk a little bit about like the theme of addiction in this book and kind of how it furthers the storyline and how you brought that into the book, or what those choices were about as you were writing?
Wow. I love that question. Because you're asking a question about something I've never really thought about at sort of that level, sort of that high level. Yes, because there is a negative addiction in the book with one character, and then there's sort of positive versions of addiction, right? And I think, I've never thought about like a theme of it because I didn't really think of it that way. But as you ask that, it's such a good question. Because it's almost, I feel like I'm repeating myself, but isn't it part of the human condition also, along with grief, is you get, and if you don't, my own feeling is if you don't get sucked into something, then I feel sorry for you. I think, I have ADHD, so I get sucked in really easily. but everybody out there who shares that knows exactly what I'm talking about.
Can relate. No
Yes,
judgment.
yes, there's a lot of it. There's a lot of us out there.
Trisha, I don't know if I've told you this. I have refused to get diagnosed, but we don't call it ADHD in my house. I call it border collie brain. You are hyper focused on something, and then we're going to totally forget it exists for 6 months, and then we're going to hyper focus on it again. So you don't have ADHD, you have border collie brain.
I have border collie brain. There we are. There it is, right in there.
You're welcome.
There it is. But there's so many good sides of like sort of getting lost in something. You don't have to have ADHD to get lost in things, right?
Yeah.
But then also, there's the other side. And I think, don't all of us struggle with habits that are bad for us that could lead to like I'm borderline chocolate addicted. Like I'm really good about it. I don't abuse it. I have 2 squares of chocolate a day, literally, one at lunch, one at dinner. But if I didn't really watch it, I would just turn brown myself. I would become one big like chocolate bunny person. Aren't we all doing that? We're all trying to balance something we really love and want to do more of, and that's good for us, and things that pull us in directions that are not necessarily good for us. I mean, it's sort of part of being who we are. But the fact that, look at dog sports. You go to one sheepdog trial and you're like, oh, I want to do that. You go to agility and like, oh my God, that is the coolest thing I've ever seen. And then all of a sudden somebody has a trailer and they have 5 dogs, or they have a farm,
Yeah, right.
They have their own agility course, or, it's just, they get into, scent detection dogs and right. So there's a lot of things to pull you in a really good way in the dog world. But I think sometimes we do need to remember, if I had a lot of clients whose dogs weren't right for fly ball or agility, or, and everybody's like, well, if you just work harder, you can overcome these problems. It's like, no, this dog is not a dog to be in agility. And so I think we need to always sort of pull back and think about what the dogs are pulling us into in terms of whether it's really good for them or not.
I have a history of being in relationships with people in addiction and have gone through a lot of, again, counseling and therapy. Something that has been the most helpful to me in my life is the definition of addiction is not how much of a substance someone uses, it's why they're using it. Wow. And I absolutely have been like, there are days where I'm like, I need to binge watch TV. I know I need it. I need this escape. I'm doing it on purpose. I have set a limit. It's not about how many drinks you drink. It's, are you drinking to escape? You could have 1 drink in the like, I just need to shut down the world. Right. And we think of alcoholics as people who are, going on a bender, but it's the motivation more than anything else.
That's a really good point.
I want to be respectful of your time. So I'm going to close with this quote from the book that I had hoped we were going to have a little bit more time to talk about, but it does speak a little bit to finding that balance. And I say that on purpose because as a sheep handler, about the balance point in sheep herding and thinking about these themes of addiction and how we cope with grief and loss and pain and fear and anger in our lives, and where we kind of fall into, and how we find the balance between a healthy coping mechanism and getting burnt out trying to be a person who saves all the dogs. And that's something that, this is one of those points from Maddie where I have to say, this is something that we struggle with as people who are helpers and who are dog professionals and want to help save all the dogs. This is a quote that really spoke to me. So I'm going to leave it up there on the screen for people to read. But I do want to close by saying that I wrote this down for you. This is my review of your book, Patricia. If you're a dog pro who is looking for a story to get lost in that is chock full of relatable content, this book is for you. So everyone who has joined today who is interested in purchasing Trisha's book, you can pre-order it. Go to patriciamcconnell.com and you'll get more information about how to pre-order this book. And Trisha, do you want to speak just for a minute about how important pre-orders are? Or do we want to just tell people to go ahead and
pre-orders are really important, just in case you might get yourself on a bestseller list, because they add all the pre-orders up and, like that's all 1 week sales or something. But, so those are wonderful. But, the other thing I mentioned earlier is the more we can get this book out of our world into people who love mysteries, well, I think it would be great to spread the word more about who we are and what we do,
Yes.
because I don't think we get enough understanding or credit.
I agree with that. So also, of course, Dogwise and patriciamcconnell.com will be selling this book on the release date. We will have those copies so you can support small business. But if you want to pre-order the book, that does help with the numbers, with selling in the numbers on the bestseller list, which would be a good thing for the resume for becoming a TV show. So since we want to get the word out, everyone who's tuning in, spread the word. And then go buy 2 copies and go put one in your local free library so that some random person picks up this novel and decides to read it and leave a good review for it. We encourage you all to pre-order the book, and we will see you all next time. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you so much, Tricia.
Thank you, Dogwise.